that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder how gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still. Welcome to the 429th edition of Energy Week. Today is the 29th of July, 2021. A lot of 20s in there.
Yeah, it is.
For those who don't know, and I'm sorry to those who do and get bored by this because we do it every week, I go to the internet every day and find the day's news, the previous 24 hours news of about energy and climate change, put together a synopsis of each interesting article with a link to the original, assemble them, post them at my blog, geoharvey.com, and also the ones that get selected go into the script that Tom and I
Well,
do.
I'm just going to mention that right now. I'll put
Yeah.
myself up here, if I can do that. Oh.
You can do it. Yeah, there you go. Tom and I are fooling around in the
Well, we haven't done this for about a year. I mean, we've done it, but we've done it differently.
We've done it differently, so we have to get back into what is actually normal. But Tom, yes,
Yeah, what I was just saying is some of these things are well worth pursuing.
yes.
They're good articles, a lot of meat in them, pictures, videos, and I'll try and mention some of the better ones.
Yep.
And you'll tell people how to access them. Then.
I will indeed. The situation here is that we have anyone who is watching this video is going to be watching it on something, and you can get to the script that Tom and I use to discuss these things at either by downloading the file, which is, you know, if you're at BCTV's website or YouTube or wherever, you'll have an address for that, or you can click on a link that will take you to it, and then follow this. And
That's the easiest way.
yeah, and what you do there is you just go to the article that you're interested in and click on the link that you find there. In this particular first article, we're going to be working with material from CNN. Let me put that up, and then Tom can fight his way through getting that picture up on the screen. Really, we have been doing this very little in the last year, and now we're back in the studio.
We're a little rusty.
A little rusty. Anyway, this particular article is from CNN.
That is downtown New York, if you hadn't guessed.
Yep.
And that tall building is the replacement for the
World
Trade Center towers that got knocked down.
Yeah.
And it's still one of the largest buildings in the world. It's the 6th largest building,
Okay.
but the 1st largest building in the U.S.
And you said before that we started that it was the largest in the hemisphere.
I think it's the largest in the hemisphere as well as the U.S.
You're talking about the Western Hemisphere.
I don't think there's anything going on in South America.
Well, I mean, you could have said the Northern Hemisphere, but of course,
I would have been wrong.
the rest of these things are most of them at least are in the Northern Hemisphere. Very good. Well, this article is from CNN, and it has a title, and Tom's going to tell us what the title is.
Oh, I am, ain't I?
I hope so. I could read it if you can't.
I got to figure out which computer I'm working on here. Come on, one of these guys is supposed to. Oh, I got 2 computers here.
That's not the one you want. You want, oh yeah, you want that one.
Yeah, I want to move this along, and it doesn't seem to want to move along.
Well, maybe it's that dongle's bad. Why don't you use the touch pad on the computer? That, yep.
I'm trying to get it to scroll.
Yeah, well,
I had it scrolling fine.
use that.
It's not doing anything.
It'll,
Oh, there's something here going on. Maybe. Yeah, something was going on that I didn't notice, and now it's scrolling.
okay.
Well, this is called Western Wildfire Smoke is Contributing to New York City's Worst Air Quality in 15 Years.
Yep.
That being said, I'm going to mention this is a very long and informative article. It's a lot of pics. There's a video. If you got some time, click on it and look at it, because
Yeah.
it's worth looking
They're
at.
talking about New York City, and we have a picture of New York City. You could put
Well,
that
let's get New
up
York
again
City
if
up
you want.
there. That's all.
But the fact is that the problems that they have in New York City are also happening all across the Northeast.
It's happening in Vermont.
Yeah. Extreme heat and dry conditions are fueling raging wildfires in the western U.S., charring over 1 million acres, causing evacuations and creating smoky conditions visible from space. Smoke stretches all the way to the East Coast, making the air quality bad in New York City. Bad in a bunch of places, including Burlington and Brattleboro and wherever.
It's not almost anywhere in the East.
Yeah.
It's skipping over some places like North Carolina.
Well, you know, it's a question of where the jet stream is pushing everything.
Exactly. We'll touch base on this one again.
We
before
will
we're
indeed.
over.
Do you want to go on, Tom, or do you
Well,
have
there's
more
a
about
couple of things I had here. I'm
Oh,
having
sorry.
trouble visualizing an acre. So I looked it up, and it's about the size of a football field without the end zones.
Right. So we've got how many acres burning? Was it 1 million?
Well, the bootleg fire is 400,000
Yeah, the
alone. So we're talking about pretty close to 1 million.
Yeah.
Well, New York City had a 24-hour air quality average index of 154, which is the worst since June of 2006. There's 80 active wildfires in the 13 states, plus some in Canada. And they're so intense they've created their own weather.
We will get to that too again.
The bootleg fire in southern Oregon is 400,000 acres. It's the largest burning wildfire in the country. But Canada has a real problem with British Columbia. They got nearly 300 active wildfires.
You know, one of the things about the bootleg fire is that it's burning down forests that were planted to sequester carbon.
Yeah.
You know, what good is that?
So this is a double whammy.
Yeah, it's a double whammy. We should
And the
go
climate crisis has made deadlier and more destructive wildfires the new normal.
Yes.
And that's the scary part of it.
Okay, our next item is from Clean Technica. We have a picture of birds flying over the Salton Sea. The Salton Sea is really
Is
salty.
that the one we got? I got a different picture coming up.
Do you?
I got a picture of a wind farm.
I think you're at the picture after this.
I might be.
Those things jump
I don't
around.
have that picture.
You don't?
No.
Well, maybe.
Maybe it's buried down below. I remember seeing that picture.
Okay. Do you want me to read the?
Yeah, read it, because I don't seem to
Okay.
have it.
The title for this is "Using Direct Lithium Extract to Secure U.S. Supplies." This is an article in Clean Technica.
I'll put that
And
picture up.
there you go. There's the picture.
Those plumes, by the way, are coming from geothermal plants in the Salton
Yes,
Sea.
and that's part of this whole story. What they've discovered is that, or NREL is working on, there is a lot of lithium in the brine that comes up to the surface from underground.
Well, the Colorado River has been dumping water here for the last 1,000 years or so. Every time it gets a lot of water, this is where it goes. And it sits there and evaporates. And the Salton Sea is salton.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of lithium in that. And they're starting to think about, well, these geothermal plants are just using the heat that's pumping the water back down into the ground before they pump it back down into the ground. How about trying to get the lithium out?
Yes. And it turns
they're
out
working on that.
there's enough, they believe that there may be enough lithium from this one site to provide 10 times as much as we need.
And we're going to be needing a lot because it is big in batteries.
That's right. Well, there's lots of different kinds of batteries. But
Well, the car batteries.
yeah, the car
car
batteries
batteries
are
use a lot
almost
of
all
lithium.
lithium batteries of one kind or another. Okay, should we go on?
I think we should.
Is that the
That's the picture I got coming up.
Okay,
Yep,
good.
so-
This is from a publication called Mozo. I don't know anything about it really, but there it is.
It's a wind farm. How about that?
What do you have for a title for the article, Tom?
Well, I guess I got one there. I got to look at it. Renewable energy generation at record highs as gas slumps.
renewable energy.
This is really about Western Australia,
Yeah,
but it's
it
generally
reflects
true
things
across the
worldwide.
board,
Yeah. Renewables jumped almost 20% in the national energy market in the first half of 2021, with New South Wales and Western Australia taking increases of 35% and 41% respectively. But of the market's 33 large gas power stations, this is the 33 power stations in Australia, in this particular market, there's 33 power stations that are run by natural gas, 33 big ones. 29 of them are at less than 20% efficiency.
They're not making money.
This is
They're losing money.
They've got to be losing money so fast, it's unbelievable. You can bet that the people who own these plants are just saying, how do we ditch these things?
I don't think they can.
Well, they've got obligations.
Can you say stranded assets?
Yeah. They've got obligations that they have to meet to keep these things open. And my guess is that the best way to deal with them would be to build batteries really fast, build wind farms and solar farms really fast.
Which is happening.
Keep those batteries charged and then shut these stations down when they're no longer needed. Yeah.
Well, renewable energy generation has surged while gas generation has taken a fall.
Yeah.
In 2020, gas generation provided just 6% of power, after a further significant drop the year before. And the role of gas is expected to continually decline over the next 2 decades. And the question is, how can I go renewable?
Yeah, and you know, we're going to be talking about this next week as relates to the United States. There's a story today that was sufficiently interesting to me that I started doing research on natural gas power plant capacity in the United States, and I discovered that it is not growing.
I wouldn't expect it was growing.
Well, last year it grew, but
yeah, but that was in the works. I mean,
yeah,
we've
been talking about the fact that the people who make the turbines are not selling turbines anymore. We've been talking about that for a couple of years. Okay, we're up to Friday the 23rd, and we have a picture of a forest fire.
I got the Great Wall of China.
You have the Great Wall of China?
Yeah.
I think you've got the wrong place there.
I must. I got a picture.
No, you're on the Great Wall of China is the next one after this.
So I must have missed 2.
You must have. Okay, I'm going to read the title here.
Yeah, because I don't have a picture of it.
Tom is finding the picture. This is from CNN, and the title is "Bootleg Fire is Burning Up Carbon Offsets." Now, this is what we were just talking about.
Absolutely.
And the synopsis is Oregon's largest wildfire so far this season. The Bootleg Fire has burned nearly 400,000 acres, spreading approximately 4 square miles a day. Now, that is easy to imagine. A piece of property.
How big is Brattleboro?
I don't know. I would imagine down the densely populated areas probably.
That's about 4 miles.
About 4 square miles.
Yeah, Brattleboro's about 10 or 15 square miles.
Yeah, but a lot of it is.
But downtown Brattleboro.
Yeah.
It's about 4 square miles.
About 4 square miles. And that would include Main Street, Putney Road, Canal Street.
Everything east of the Thruway.
Yeah. Okay. This is 4 square miles a day across the southern parts of the state. At the time of this report, the flames had spread through 1/5 of the forests that were set aside for carbon offsets in the immediate area. So
1/5, huh?
They've planted trees or preserved trees in order to maintain them and for as a carbon sink, and they're burnt.
Yeah.
So the carbon sink is gone, and which tells you something about the value of carbon sinks.
So we're eating our reserves.
Yeah, it's not good. Okay, now we've got the Great Wall of China.
Well, we'll get that picture up there.
There you go.
If I can.
Put it up. Get me off the screen. Nobody wants to look at me. This is from Reuters, and I'll bet you have a title for this one.
I do. China aims to install over 30 gigawatts of new energy storage by 2025. Now, what do I always say about gigawatts?
What do you say, Tom?
They're bigawatts.
There you go. China aims to install over 30 gigawatts of new energy storage capacity by 2025, its state planner said, as part of efforts to boost renewable power consumption while ensuring stable operations of the electricity grid system. The plan includes several storage technologies, but not pumped hydro. They left pumped hydro out because I think they wanted to develop these other technologies. They wanted people.
Well, they're talking about new storage technology.
Right.
And pumped hydro's been around for a long time.
It has indeed. 100 years.
I think Tommy Edison played with it
He might have.
out in Niagara Falls.
They had one in Connecticut in the 1920s that was grid tied, I know. So that's 100 years ago. 30 gigawatts is a lot of energy, and the beauty of this thing is, depending upon where the batteries are put, they're going to have different values. But it makes the whole business of power transmission a whole lot easier. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, it does.
So,
Well, the article says since renewable power sources can fluctuate with weather conditions, regions in China have ordered renewable power developers to install energy storage as supporting facilities of solar and wind, which makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. China's existing storage capacity, this is what's there now in the whole country of China, 35 gigawatts. Then they're adding 30. So they're doubling it.
by 2025.
Well, China's existing storage capacity is 35.
Yeah.
So by
25.
2025,
It'll go up to
they're
65.
doubling it,
Yeah,
basically.
basically. Okay.
And the Great Walls in China, that's the picture there, they stretch from the present-day Russian border on the north to the Tao River, which is about in the middle of China. And they've been there for a long time.
They have. That's an impressive piece of work, as anybody who's seen it.
Put the picture
will tell
back
you.
up again for a second
Yeah.
there.
A lot of work went into producing that Great Wall.
Well, it's really a series of walls.
A bunch of them.
And they were trying to keep the Mongolian hordes out, and they succeeded.
For a while.
For a while, anyhow.
And then the Mongolians took over. And after that, they kept the Chinese in instead of the Mongolians out. Actually, I've heard that the purpose of this was to keep the Chinese in.
I've heard that too.
Yeah.
I've heard that
Okay,
too.
let's go to the next one. This is a Mercedes
Wait a
EQ.
second, I got a different picture.
You always have a different picture. What do you got there?
I've got the.
You're having a problem there, Tom.
I've got the wind farm, the solar panels on the lake.
That's coming up next.
Well,
I'll read this.
yeah, we'll have to do
This is
without
from-
it. I don't know what's happened to my. I had all of this stuff in order yesterday.
I'll bet it's in order, and the problem is the mouse. Okay, Mercedes-Benz prepares to go all electric. This is from Clean Technica. Mercedes-Benz provided visions of a future unlike what other automakers see. They include a realization that the market can flip to 100% electric vehicles before 2030.
I think that's inevitable.
I think it is too. But you know, Mercedes is saying they think maybe this could happen. And here's the deal. If the market goes 100% EVs, anybody who's making anything else is going to be making cars that can't sell.
Absolutely, right.
So they have to be prepared for this eventuality. If the market flips, Mercedes has to be ready, and that means it has to be prepared to change to 100% EV production before 2030. So they have to build the factories or convert the factories and set up the assembly lines and set up the parts provisions and so forth to get
pipeline.
The pipeline, that's right, to get all of this together. They've only got 8 years to do this. And, you know, that's
8 years goes pretty fast.
8 years goes pretty fast. That's right. Okay, should we go on? We're up to Saturday, July 24th, and we do have a picture of a floating wind farm, and you could put that on if you
I
use.
got the floating wind farms. So
Yeah.
let's put that one on.
Yeah, there you go.
That's interesting because it serves multiple purposes. I mean, the chips work, the solar chips work better because they've got water cooling.
Yep.
And they keep the pond from evaporating.
Yep.
And they've been putting these things up on reservoirs where they don't want them to evaporate.
Although this one is not on a reservoir. This article is from Clean Technica. What do you have for a title for this, Tom?
I bet I can come up with that answer. World's largest floating solar farm proposed for Indonesia.
Sunseep
So
Group.
this doesn't exist yet.
No, it doesn't, but they're building it. Is a solar energy developer in Singapore. Its chief executive told Reuters it plans to build the world's largest floating solar farm in Indonesia, about 50 kilometers from Singapore. The solar farm is expected to have a capacity of 2.2 gigawatts.
Bigawatts.
This is a solar
That's
farm.
that's large.
Yeah.
That's very large.
It will cost about $2 billion to construct. Now,
We have a solar farm here in town and it's 5 megawatts.
That's right.
This is 2.2 gigawatts.
So this is about 400 times as big.
Something like that, yeah.
Now, this is from Clean Technica, so I would assume that when they're talking about $2 billion, they're talking about American dollars. You got to worry because in that part of the world, they
sometimes
could
it's
be
Australian dollars
sometimes it's
popping up, and
Australian.
They were only about 80 cents or something like that.
75, maybe
75
it's
cents,
close
yeah.
to that amount. But the thing is, this thing is going to be huge. They're going to use the electricity in Singapore, but of course Singapore doesn't even have enough water to build a thing like this. Singapore is
Singapore is kind of a little city-state.
Yeah, and
It's
their
gotten
water
as big as it can
Yeah.
as it can get,
Yeah.
but it needs to get bigger.
and the water they've got is used for shipping canals and channels and so forth.
Well, the new farm's going to cover 4,000 acres of a reservoir.
Which is only 1/100th of the size of the Bootleg Fire.
Man, that's a good way of looking at it. The
Oh,
energy will be generated and stored to supply energy around the clock. So they're going to.
They're going to
The
have
article
storage.
didn't talk much about it, but they're going to have some pretty big batteries there or something like that.
Well, people are putting up batteries like mad. It's
It's a
crazy.
good idea.
In fact, Elon Musk was. I think it's going to be reported next week. Elon Musk said that they were talking about sales of 1 million Powerwall batteries a year.
Well,
So,
he's been selling them pretty cheap.
yeah. Okay. Our next item. Do you have that picture of cars?
I don't yet. What's going on here?
I don't know. Try going up instead of down. You might have a thing where you're
I
jumping to the
remember
next page.
looking at this picture. I had it.
Okay. This is from Clean Technica. And why don't you put the picture of the cars up on the screen?
While I'm looking. Yeah,
There
I
you
had
go.
all of this in my. Had it all on my computer at home,
Yeah.
but somehow when I put it on this thumb
It's
drive,
very suspicious. You're missing every other one.
yeah, isn't it?
These are Renault vehicles.
I'll put that.
And
back
the
up.
title for this is UK County Identifies Simple Yet Brilliant Way to Get Butts into EV Seats. And the synopsis says the UK County of Kent. This guy who wrote this, I had to change it. I couldn't let it be done the way he wrote it because he said Kent County. And if you talked about Kent County in that part of the UK,
You've lived there.
people would not know what you were talking about.
Oh, was that so?
Oh, they never said Kent County. Kent County? You know, in Devonshire, they don't talk about Devonshire. They talk about Devon, and it's spelled Devonshire, but it's pronounced Devon.
Oh, was that so? Okay.
Well, they actually spell it Devon, but you know, in the UK county of Kent, which is in the southeast corner, there is trialing a brilliant program offering small businesses 2-month trials of electric vans. Kent is starting with a fleet of 24 electric vans from Renault, 20 Kangoo E-Tech vans.
Which were also made by Renault.
Well, no, these are the 24 vehicles are from Renault, and they include 24 Kangoo E-Tech vans, and 4 Zoe vans.
Okay.
And the Zoe vans, I think in that picture, you want to put the picture back up, Tom?
If I can.
There you go. I think the one that's in
the back?
No, I think that's one of the Kangoo vans. I think the Zoe van is the one in the lower left.
The coupe.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, the other two are vans. I think you're right.
Yeah. And what they're doing, this is brilliant. They say, if you have a business and you think that you could use a vehicle of this type, we'll let you borrow one for 2 months for free.
Well, the article said something about, if you're just doing a drive in it, it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
You got to live with this thing for a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And that's what they're trying to do.
And that's what they're doing. And in the course of 2 months, they're going to find out how much it costs to buy the gasoline that fuels these things.
A lot. Well, the gasoline that it eliminates is a lot.
Yeah. To buy the gas to fuel these things is zero. You buy electricity to fuel these things, but electricity is a whole lot cheaper than gasoline.
Yep.
Yeah. Do you have more on this, Tom?
I do, but it's
You don't know where it is.
It's on my computer at home, but it isn't on my
Maybe we
thumb
could
drive.
try the next one. I've got a picture of a sunset. Do you want to
Well,
put
we
the
got that picture.
Well, let's put the sunset up.
I've got that picture.
Okay, this is an article from Clean Technica.
NRDC sues to challenge seismic testing in the Gulf of Mexico. And NRDC is the name of it. Doesn't stand for anything.
Well, it does, actually. It's the Natural Resources Defense Council.
That's what it used to do.
It's what it used to be.
Now it's NRDC.
Yeah,
and it's a private environmental action group.
Right.
It's not the government.
No, it's not the government.
Not the UN. It's private.
It's private, although I believe it is a nonprofit.
It is
and
a
it's
nonprofit,
very
yeah.
important.
Oh, yeah.
On January 19th, just before President Biden took office, the National Marine Fisheries Service, now mind you, this is before Joe Biden took office, so this was under Donald Trump.
This is still Trump.
The National Marine Fisheries Service published a regulation allowing
This was
oil
a
and
last-ditch effort
yeah,
on
this
Trump.
is a slap in the face before I leave. A regulation allowing seismic oil and gas testing in the Gulf of Mexico with minimum protection for marine mammals or anybody else. The NRDC and its partner groups have filed a lawsuit, so they want to stop this.
Well, here's what's going on. These seismic blasts, which are used to find oil and gas in the ocean, they're harming whales and other marine animals.
You don't even
who
have to
use their ears and voices to communicate.
These sounds underwater,
Yeah.
they travel incredibly
distances.
immense different distances, and I would imagine that whales that are miles away could be hurt by this.
Well, they're talking right now about the American whale, which is the Gulf whale. There's only about 50 individuals left. Talk about endangered species.
That's sad.
It is really, they're magnificent animals.
And you know the thing that's terrible about this, if you look at our use of fossil fuels, I saw data today that made me think the oil and gas industry is about to fall off a cliff. It's already falling off a cliff.
It is falling off a cliff. It's teetering.
Why would we be doing seismic testing in the Gulf of Mexico for a market that is collapsing?
That's a good question.
We don't need that oil and gas. I don't think, anyway.
The people who own that oil and gas need to sell it.
Well,
That's what's
I
going
went
on.
into the FERC databases earlier today,
Yeah.
and what I found was that in the first 5 months of 2021, the natural gas electricity generating capacity in the United States increased by 0.01 gigabytes. So we're talking about 10 megawatts rather, 0.01 gigawatts, 10 megawatts. This is one very, very, very small, the equivalent of one very, very small natural gas plant being built in the United States in a 5-month period.
Why build a natural gas plant?
Good question, and that's why they're not being built. Now, what happened was this year, the installations of natural gas plants in the United States has fallen by 90% from what it was last year. 90% is a collapse.
For sure.
The previous year, it had already fallen 40%.
Well, renewables have become so cheap that you can't even think of anything but.
What excuse is there for buying building a natural gas plant? The price of renewable energy is going to continue going down unless something very weird happens because of Wright's Law. Wright's Law says this is going to work the same way as computers, it'll work the same way as cell phones, it'll work the same way as a whole bunch of things. It's like cars. When Henry Ford, started cutting the cost of cars so ordinary people could afford them, the price of cars dropped. And it dropped so hard. Significant drops. It was like, it was a drop of 75% in the cost. And at the same time, his workers were working shorter hours at higher pay. And
sounds like a win-win situation.
It sure does. And so all of a sudden, his workers could afford to
buy a car.
Buy cars.
That was his whole plan.
And this is what's happening with wind power and solar power and batteries. Well, guess what? The cost of natural gas plants is not going down.
At all.
And it's already too high compared to oil and gas. So where are you going to be 10 years from now? If you invest in oil and gas, you're going to be in not a very good position.
Well, a subdivision of natural gas plants is fracking, and that's almost totally disappeared now.
Has it?
Yeah.
Well, I knew that it was in trouble. It's too expensive. And what's happening is, well, it's been for quite a while. The people who are doing fracking were wildcatters. The big companies.
The big guys stayed away from it.
And the wildcatters can go in and they can make some kind of pitch to a person who's got a little bit too much money and not enough knowledge of the situation. And they can say,
when it goes bust, they disappear.
Yeah, that's right. They say, we bought this oil field for 1 cent on the dollar. Look at the great deal we got. And now, if you just give us $1 billion, we'll develop it. And what happens is they pay themselves very high pay and
disappear.
Okay, our next item.
On a related note, what's happening with the tar sands? We haven't talked much about that.
No, we haven't. And they are still trying to export.
Well, it's a Canadian government thing.
It's a government thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, our next item, and we are still on Saturday, the 24th of July, is a little forest.
Yeah, I got a different picture.
You have a different picture.
I don't know. I don't know what it's.
Maybe you should be scrolling sideways.
I got comments on every one of these things, and I've looked at all of them. But
okay, this is from Clean Technica, and the title of it, I'm sorry, this is from the Asian Post, and that is ASEAN Post. 2021, the year climate predictions became reality, and by golly, this kind of title is just appearing over and over and over again. The scientists have been predicting that things, and all of a sudden they're coming true. On the heels of jaw-dropping heat and flooding across 3 continents, nearly 200 nations will gather on Monday, and on Monday means, from our perspective, last Monday, to validate critical UN climate change report 100 days ahead of the political summit charged with keeping the Earth livable. The world isn't the same as what it was when the last report was issued. And this is, what they're talking about is what we're seeing in the United States. In the West, you've got fires. You've got heat waves that are breaking records by 8 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah, scary.
This is scary. When a heat wave, when a record is broken for heat in some place for some day, it's usually by a tiny amount.
A degree, maybe.
Maybe on the outside, maybe 1/4 of a degree, maybe of 100th of a degree, but not 8 degrees.
No.
And we're seeing 6 heat records set for every cold record set. That indicates what direction we're going in. And we're seeing a bunch of other things like drought, and it's across the world. And then what happens? It's happening out west now. The monsoon comes in, it dumps its water on land that is completely parched, so it acts like asphalt instead of a sponge. And the water just runs off.
Rolls right off.
Rolls right off. Fills the reservoirs in California. This hasn't happened yet, but I mean, the last time this happened, they filled the reservoirs in unbelievably short time, and we had reservoirs that were overfilled, which is dangerous. They were thinking of evacuating Sacramento because the reservoirs were full. Okay, I want to go on from that.
That's a pretty sloppy job of cutting trees.
Well, you know, I think that's the reason the guy took this picture. I chose that out of the Unsplash stuff. There's a lot of good pictures at Unsplash. Okay.
Well, what they're doing down south is they're bringing a machine in there. They grind up everything into wood chips.
Yeah.
And there's nothing left.
And then they ship that to the UK.
They ship it to
and
Europe,
they had promised the people in Georgia that they would only take forest falls and waste stuff, and then the next thing you know,
taking everything.
They're taking everything because they didn't sign any contracts saying that. Okay, we have an item from CNN, and I'll bet you got this.
You got this
Smoke from a wildfire. And what do you have for a title for the article, Tom?
With wildfires blazing across the West, more counties are declaring states of emergency.
You know, I think if I were in charge of a county out west, I would declare a state of emergency even if nothing was wrong at this point. As dozens of wildfires burn across the West, officials declared additional states of emergency for counties in California and Nevada, while the nation's largest blaze in Oregon continues to swell. The bootleg fire in southern Oregon is only 42% contained.
A little bit more than that now, not by much.
Not by much.
Maybe as much as 46%.
But it's, you know, they've been having a terrible time working on this, and you know, every time the firefighters work on this and the wind direction shifts, they get chased out of where they're doing, and they have to go farther back and start all over again.
They got people from Mexico coming up to help them.
Well, we can be grateful that the wall wasn't finished, can't we?
Yeah. Well, bootleg has scorched over 400,000 acres, which I think we already mentioned. It was started by lightning on July 6th, so it's only been around for less than a month.
But it's burned over 400,000 acres.
It's over 400,000 acres now. That was last Sunday, I think, when I wrote this. Extreme fire behavior helped to create a tornado last weekend.
Yeah.
And overall, the crews are battling 88 U.S. wildfires, and I'm sure that's more than that now.
Yep. Okay, our next item is from Ars Technica. We have a picture of a reactor control panel. If you would put that up, Tom.
My goodness, I don't know what's. I remember looking at that, but it's not on my.
I'm telling you, it's every other one. And
yeah, it seems to be, and I don't know why.
Did you try scrolling sideways? I'm not kidding.
I didn't. Let me try that. Bingo. That's exactly what happened.
Okay.
That's exactly what happened.
All right, here you are. You've got your notes.
So I got my control panel here.
Okay. Let's put the control panel up so people can see it.
Oh. Come on, you.
There you go.
That, ladies and gentlemen, is a control panel.
And if it looks
it's from a nuclear control panel.
Yeah, and if it looks like it was designed in 1947, there's a reason for that. Actually, it would have been after 1947, but that really that's old-fashioned stuff. What do you have for a title for this?
Nuclear power's reliability is dropping as extreme weather increases. Now that's interesting. What's the connection here?
Yeah, there's a bunch of connections actually. It's increasingly clear that existing power systems are not designed for climate change. Nuclear power plants are no exception. Analysis looking at the broad range of climate events shows that it's not just hot weather that puts plants at risk. It's the full range of disturbances. Well, we saw that thing in Texas. One of the nuclear power plants had to be shut down because
of exactly, it was getting
because
too
it was
hot.
too cold
That's right. It was
last
getting,
winter.
Yeah. It was
And
getting
you
too
know,
cold.
a pump froze, and how you can't, you know, these plants have to have everything working.
Well,
But
we've talked about it here. They knew about these problems. They did nothing about them.
yeah, that's right. They also, if a nuclear plant needs to be cooled,
Absolutely.
and if it doesn't get cooled, you
can-
have to shut it down.
Well, if you don't shut it down, bad things happen.
Bad things can happen. If there's a drought, you can't cool it if the plant depends on water.
So what do? You got to
You
shut it down.
If the air temperature, you know, some plants are designed so that they can operate without water. That's more expensive, but they have cooling towers that can do that. But if it's too hot outside, you can't cool the plant with the cooling towers. So what do? You shut it down.
Shut back 10 and punt.
That's right. That's what it is. Do you have more on this, Tom?
The frequency of climate-related nuclear plant outrages is almost 8 times higher than it was in the 1990s. Outages.
I think outrageous was a
Droughts
pretty good word.
were the source of the longest destruction.
Droughts, yeah, and I remember, and also floods.
Well, the article said droughts were the source of the longest
The
destruction.
longest, but also
Oh.
floods are. Fort Calhoun was down for over a year.
I think they mentioned that in the article.
Yeah. And that was actually more than just a flood. It was put out because of a flood, and then they had to leave it out because of damage. And then when they tried to start it, there was a problem, and they had to shut it down again. And then there was a fire, and then, you know, it just goes, it's like somebody was in the background, you know, lurking behind a cloud going zzz, zzz, zzz.
Something like that. Something like that.
You know, you just don't know. Anyway, should we go on?
Yeah, we got another one coming up. Let's see what picture you got.
This is,
I got this picture.
oh, good for you.
I've got this picture. Let's see.
Monday, July 26th, and we've got an item from CNN.
The largest fire in the U.S. continues to defy crews' efforts to tame it, and the weather isn't helping.
Yeah. Despite the efforts of firefighters, I really feel sorry for these guys because this is tough.
Oh, they're working hard. They're not screwing around.
Battling the bootleg fire, the raging flames of the nation's largest wildfire continued to spread through southern Oregon as officials declared a weather warnings in the area. The fire is currently 46% contained.
As
Obviously,
of Tuesday, it was 53%.
Tuesday, it was 53.
Yep.
Okay. Now, when I think about this, I think about, you know, I working my way through college, I used to operate chemical kilns. And the room that I worked in was, what do you,
I'm trying to get you up.
oh, don't worry about it. Oh, there you go. I
Just using
ran
the wrong
chemical
mouse.
kilns, and the room that I worked in, during hot weather, the room was very often at 125 or 130 degrees. That was the room I worked in. But I didn't work in it constantly. I'd go in and work for 5
I
minutes
hope
and
if
then
it
come
was
out.
that high.
And then during hot weather, the room that I cooled off in was 105.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Well, I had a big fan, and I'd just run it on me. And I'd have 3 shirts, and I'd change shirts. So 2 were drying off while I was wearing the other. But the situation, you know, gave me an understanding of what it's like to work in heat. These guys are working in heat, but they're also working in a whole bunch of equipment that they've got to have, including equipment, you know, like gas masks and stuff. And on top of that, they're doing very strenuous work on fires in bad air. This does not sound like fun.
I don't think so. I think you're going to be getting, some of these guys are going to be getting pretty sick.
Well, you can bet that some of them already have become pretty sick. I mean, you do that and you wind up having problems with the amount of salt in your system and so forth because you sweat so much.
Well, a couple of notes I got here.
Okay.
Why they call it the bootleg fire is because it's named after the bootleg spring, which is nearby. Why that's named the bootleg spring, I wasn't able to find out. And I found out about bootleg in the During Prohibition, people used to hide their whiskey in their boots,
Yeah.
so it was bootleg. There's a short but scary video in this, and there's a lot of pictures.
Yeah.
The fire has scorched over 400,000 acres on Tuesday. Crews are battling 86 large wildfires throughout the U.S., scorching 1.5 million acres. More than 20,000 firefighters have been deployed. Hundreds more fires are burning in British Columbia. And the Mexicans have actually gone right up there to help the Canadians.
So the Canadians don't have a border fence either.
I guess not. In California, there's 9 large fires currently active. And the Tamarack Fire, which I think we've talked about, along the California-Nevada border has destroyed nearly 80,000 acres.
Ugh.
You add all these things up, this is a
It gets
giant
to be big.
disaster.
You know, one thing I'd like to comment on, I told you about working in the chemical plant. I was a supervisor in that plant, and all of the men who worked under me, there were no women in the plant on our shift, which was not, no woman in her right mind would want to work in that plant. But all of the men who worked under me when I was a supervisor were Puerto Rican, which is not identical to Mexican, obviously, but they're both Hispanic. And those were the best workers I ever saw. They were amazing. They were so good.
I have
and
heard
when
that
people,
before.
when people start getting
Puerto
down on
Ricans
Hispanics,
were workaholics.
when people get down on Hispanics,
Yeah.
it rankles me like mad.
Well, there's a couple of dozen different kinds of Hispanics.
Well, there are, but and maybe some of them are better, and maybe some of them are worse. But it nevertheless bothers me.
Yeah.
Because if you start getting down on Hispanics, you're down on the best workers I've ever worked with.
That's interesting.
And it just
But they're lazy.
Oh, these guys were not lazy. They were not lazy. They would go into an area. They would finish the job that had been underway on the day shift. They would clean the area up, and it would be immaculate when they left.
Okay.
It was, and they would do twice as much work finishing the job as it took to start it. They were an impressive crew.
Sounds like it to
And
me.
you know, if you're going to, I realize that Puerto Ricans are not Mexicans, but I think the thinking of coming down on Mexicans is about equal to the thinking that would be required to come down on Puerto Ricans or Aleuts or Danes or,
it's
you
kind
know,
of a
you
white
name it.
supremacy thing.
I'm
It's always been around, but under Trump, it got
out of hand.
out of hand.
Well, you know,
We're still dealing with it.
wherever it came from, and it's not whites only who have this kind of problem. It's not good. That kind of prejudice denies things that should not be denied.
Well,
Okay.
no kind of prejudice makes any sense at all when you look at it. It's always
Well, except for backyard prejudice.
what's that?
Anybody who borders on my backyard, I don't like. Doesn't matter who they are or where they are. That's not true, by the way. I'm just saying, you know, this is,
I was thinking about my sister's father-in-law.
yeah.
That was the way he was. He had a neighbor whose tree was dropping leaves on his lawn. He cut the branches off.
Oh, cute.
The branch that was overhanging his fence, he cut it off.
I'm surprised he didn't have the neighbor rake it up for him. And if the tree had been dropping apples, would he have thrown the apples over the fence?
I don't think so.
Okay, we have a picture of a car that
We
we're
do.
supposed,
Well, it's sort of a picture of a car.
which you should
Yeah,
put
let's
up
get
so
that
people
picture.
can see how it is sort of a picture of a car. This is a picture of a Mercedes you're supposed to imagine. So I labeled this Imagine a Car, and this
Okay.
is an imaginary promotion by Mercedes-Benz. And
Well, Mercedes teases EQXX, which is the name of their car, with 1,000 kilometers of range, and that's 600 miles.
yeah, this came from Clean Technica. A lot of talk today is about efficient power transfer battery electric vehicles. Most new EVs have a range of 250 miles. Some can go 300 or more without charging. A few can even go 400 miles, but now Mercedes is working on the X, which might have a range of 1,000 kilometers, which is 621.
They used to name cars like Ford Custom,
Yeah.
Chevrolet.
Model A.
Model A. Now it's an EQXX.
It's incomprehensible. It's inexplicable. It's unpronounceable. And by the way, this car, they're very proud of the fact that it'll have a range of 621 miles.
They say it might have a range.
Might have. You remember, Tom, that we were talking about the Aptera, which Aptera was saying could have a range of 1,000 miles. And if you...
Well, the Aptera was specially designed.
Yeah. If you didn't really drive it all that much and you parked it out in the sun because it had solar panels built into its skin,
it was generating its own power.
And you could just go for a long time without charging
Wouldn't
it.
cost you anything at all.
Yeah. So,
Well, the EQXX is going to be a compact car with a long sloping roofline designed to allow it to slip through the air. Mercedes aims to boost the energy density of the battery by 20%, yielding up to 620 miles of range. So that's where they get that 600 miles of range.
Yeah.
So it conceivably could do that, but you got to pay extra to get that.
Well, of course. In fact, the Aptera, which I mentioned, is a three-wheeled car that at its lowest cost is like $27,500 with
That was a neat car. We talked about it on a show.
with a range of 250 miles. But at its highest cost, it was almost $20,000 more. That's the one that had the 1,000-mile range.
Yeah.
And it had a whole bunch of other goodies in the mix. Should we go on?
Yeah.
Okay. Here is a picture of a transmission line.
Ah, I got it.
There you go. And we have an item from Clean Technica.
Powering rural economic development with renewables.
Electric cooperatives loom large in the conversation about U.S. energy systems, past, present, and future. Despite the fact that they only serve about 13% of the electricity load in the country, importantly, they may have difficulties replacing their aging coal fleets and less costly wind and solar projects, or with less costly.
I'd like to mention a little bit about co-ops. A lot of people don't know much about them, and they're all owned by their customers. That's why they call them co-ops. They go back to the New Deal, with the Rural Electrification Act.
Picture.
You want me to get the picture
Yeah,
up, huh?
put the picture up.
Yeah, might as well.
No.
Well, the New Deal with Franklin Roosevelt came up with the Rural Electrification Act. And his purpose was to create co-ops to serve rural areas that were bypassed by the larger electricity producers.
My grandparents had a house in Winchester, New Hampshire, and there is
They
no
couldn't get power.
way they would have had electric power at that house.
Yeah.
They didn't. And then when this came along, they got electric power.
Well, there are still a few co-ops left in Vermont, Richford, I think.
There's actually a fair number. I think
Well,
there's
when you
about
go up
15
north, there's a
of them.
few.
Yeah.
There was one here in Windham County,
Was there?
and the guy who was running it was stealing.
Uh-oh.
And so they wound up selling out to Green Mountain Power. So there's no longer a co-op in Windham County anymore.
Okay.
Let's see, what do I got? Co-ops have lagged other utilities in retiring their coal plants because they can't use tax credits because they don't pay tax.
Yes.
Okay. And Biden's American Jobs Plan is providing incentives to these co-ops.
Well, that's good because
He
they
knows
can use
what's
them.
going on. There's maps and tables in this article that are worth looking at.
You know, if you think about Tri-State, I think it was called Tri-State in Colorado and out there. That was a co-op of co-ops.
A co-op of co-ops.
And they were having a lot of trouble because people wanted to go to renewable energy, and the overall scheme
didn't want it.
co-op didn't want to do it. Now they're doing it kind of, but anyway, Our next item, this is a picture of a NextEra solar project.
got
That's
it.
a big project, and this is Tuesday, July 27th, and this is from E&E News. That is E&E News.
The largest U.S. renewable developer plans transmission and solar surge.
The world's largest renewable energy developer is eyeing transmission project opportunities as the Biden administration focuses on adding large amounts of wind, solar, and storage to the nation's grid in the coming decades. President Biden is pushing for support for transmission lines. And by the way, you remember that big project that they were talking about having in Wyoming, and they were going to put in transmission lines to take the electricity to San Diego?
I remember that, yes.
They are almost permitted. They're almost ready to go.
So that's going to go ahead.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
But, you know, I mean, this is, the thing that bothers me about this is every time I see this and think about the billions of dollars that are going to go into transmission lines, some of which may be necessary. I don't know.
They're going to be obsolete in a few years.
I think so, because there's really not very many places that can't generate their own power one way or another.
Well, we're talking about distributed generation now.
Yes,
A
that's exactly
new
right.
model of the grid.
Yeah.
Well, Biden has called for the nation's power sector to decarbonize by 2035 and for the economy to reach net zero emissions by 2050.
Mm-hmm.
So he's pushing Congress to support build out of high voltage power lines to unlock renewable energy, which remains the lowest cost generation option. And it's going to continue going lower.
Yep. Okay, we've got an item here from Time Magazine, and I'll bet you have a title for this.
We got a picture and it's up
The
already.
picture's up already.
Vermont, that picture is the Vermont Law School solar array, by the way.
Yes, it is.
And this Vermont utility is revolutionizing its power grid to fight climate change. Will the rest of the country follow suit? And there's a 5-minute video about the Empire State, which is pretty interesting because they've retrofitted the entire Empire State to be energy efficient, which is quite a job.
Okay, Green Mountain Power CEO Mary McClure says the utility is transforming its grid. GMP is moving away from large generator plants and long transmission lines and toward a more decentralized approach, which is basically what we were just talking about.
Distributed generation.
Distributed generation. Go ahead.
I got some notes from here. Decarbonizing is not as simple as replacing fossil fuel stations with wind and solar. Renewable resources don't work when the wind doesn't blow or the sun doesn't shine. I mean, we've talked about that.
Mm-hmm.
So a major shift to renewables will require electric grids to be reconstructed to account for those limitations, which they are doing.
Yeah.
Okay, so Green Mountain Power engineers modeled electrical scenarios and are testing components to make sure the system would work safely. So Green Mountain Power is reconfiguring their grid to deal with this.
Right.
Okay, so they're getting ahead of the game.
Yep. Okay, Tom, we're running out of time soon, so we should get
Well,
farther
we started quite a bit late.
Yeah, I know. Our next item with a Tesla Model 3 photograph is from the BBC.
Tesla profit surge driven by record car deliveries. People want Teslas.
People want Teslas. Tesla has reported surging profits despite shortages of semiconductor chips and congestion at ports hampering production. Sales rose to $12 billion in the 3 months ending to the end of June, from $6 billion a year ago, so it's doubled, when its U.S. factory was shut down. A record 200,000 cars will be delivered in this quarter.
That's a lot of cars.
Yep.
I'm
Okay.
trying to find out where I was here.
Well, and while you're doing that, if you don't mind, I'm going to skip on to the next item.
Well, we just had the picture of the Vermont Law School, right?
Yes, that's right. And then this red Tesla. And the next item that we've got, if you could click on that so people can see it. There you go.
Oh, it's a pyro cumulus.
It sure is. This next one is from ABC, which is not the American Broadcast Company, it's the Australian Broadcast Company, I think.
Got it. Super outbreaks of fire thunderstorms. That's what we're looking at right there.
Yes, it is.
Could change the Earth's climate. Australian and U.S. experts warned.
Fire thunderstorms, which occur in pyrocumulonimbus clouds. Now, how's that for a word to say 3 times fast?
Well, cumulonimbus is your
a
thundercloud,
yeah.
your rainstorm cloud. So this is pyro to indicate it's created by a fire.
That's right. Not only create their own weather system, but may also be powerful enough to actually change the climate,
That's scary.
according to scientists from Australia and the United States. That is, I think, an extraordinary photograph
I'm going to put it up again.
of a pyrocumulonimbus. Well, this is a pyro, and I misspelled pyro in the. I should put up a sign when this happens that says, you know how you see in books a thing that says this page intentionally left blank?
Yeah.
I should put up a sign that says this error intentionally placed.
Well, that's called a pyrocumulus cloud, but it's really no different, or not much different from a pyrocumulonimbus.
Yeah, well, I
And
wouldn't.
a cumulonimbus is your regular thunderstorm cloud.
Yeah, and I could just see lightning coming out of a thing like that.
Oh, sure, for sure.
Yep.
Well, let's see, what do I have to say? First of all, there's a lot of pictures in this article.
Yes.
So if you're interested in pictures.
Very interesting pictures.
Fire thunderstorms. Wow. During Australia's Black Summer, release as much energy as about, you ready for this? 2,000 Hiroshima-sized nuclear explosions. So there's a lot of energy involved.
See, if we could trap that energy, we wouldn't have to worry about.
We'd be set.
Yeah, we'd be set.
Fires injected as much smoke to the stratosphere as a moderately sized volcanic eruption. So these fires are going to have a lasting effect.
Yes, they are.
When Mount Tambora in Indonesia erupted in 1815, the resulting cooling effect of the smoke and ash caused what's been dubbed a volcanic winter. And it could happen again.
Okay, if you don't mind, I'm going to move ahead again.
I will.
We have a
ahead with
picture here of Chattanooga.
Chattanooga.
Yeah, this is an article from Clean Technica.
That's the countryside of Chattanooga. And it could be Vermont, except we don't have those red rocks.
At least not around Brattleboro.
I've never remember seeing much red rocks in Vermont. That means there's iron in the ground.
Okay, I'll take your word for that. I didn't know.
Well, Appalachia is poised to be part of the shift to clean energy.
Yeah, as federal policymakers design policies to transition and invest in clean energy economy, it is imperative that Appalachia can rebuild and grow a 21st century sustainable economy that builds shared prosperity. The people of Appalachia need to be at the table, not on the menu.
Well, they've been on a menu.
Yeah, they have been.
You know, Appalachia's famous for coal mines, and they're closing all the coal mines.
Oh, you should see, we'll see the chart that shows what's happening to coal energy next week, first
Okay.
item. And it's incredible what's happening to coal. I mean, it's a dead issue almost.
Well, what they're talking about for over 150 years, Appalachia provided cheap energy that's powered the nation. It really has. I mean, most of our energy's been coming out of their coal mines.
Yeah,
I've seen them. I've been down in a coal
I
mine.
know. And this will show on that graph next week.
And there's
very
enormous
impressive.
wealth has been pulled by from the hills of Appalachia, enriching other parts of the country, while leaving the environmental degradation and persistent poverty in its wake. So they were digging the coal in Appalachia, but it wasn't.
Did you put that picture up? So
I had
people-
that picture
Oh,
up.
did you?
Want to see it
Okay.
again?
Well, you know, I don't have to
enough
look
for a
at
while.
myself. You know, it's, and I don't think anybody else wants to look at me either, to tell you the truth.
Well, in any case, they were taking the coal out of Appalachia, but they weren't doing anything to benefit the people who lived there, and it was a mess.
Well, they had jobs, some of them.
They had good paying
But
jobs in the end.
there's like 35,000 miners now, coal miners.
Okay.
100 years ago, there were something like 800,000.
And they weren't making a pittance.
That was a bad job, I think,
Yeah.
really. I
But
mean,
in
16
the,
tons and what do you get was,
In the 60s, they started making decent wages.
Yeah.
And, as they're closing out now, these guys are losing out on some good paying jobs.
well, they make a little bit more than solar panel installers, but
Not by much.
Not much more. And solar panel installers don't get black lung disease, at least
Not
not
too many of
normally.
them.
Okay, we should go on.
I think so.
And I've put up a new picture of a Jeep Wrangler. And by the way, that's not an electric vehicle. That is a hybrid. But
That's a hybrid, yeah.
Nevertheless, it's representative of the kind of thing that
see
this
if I
article is about. This is
Let's see
from
if I can get this.
Clean Technica.
Let's see if I can get it to come up here. This is crazy because half of my articles are on the other half of the page.
Yeah.
I don't know how that happened, but it's okay. There's a Jeep Wrangler 4xe. Here we got another good name, a 4xe.
Yeah, absolutely. You know.
EV transmissions are awesome.
Yep.
And there's an image of a transmission in the picture.
Yes. Upcoming full EV off-road vehicles are going to be awesome. The biggest advantage will be how controllable they are at low RPMs. Instead of having gas brake over obstacles, you can just use the right amount of power to climb an obstacle smoothly. This advantage is greatly magnified by gear reduction.
Well, the gist of the article is that EV transmissions, though unnecessary, are a good thing.
Yes, and that's, the woman who wrote this, by the way, is very into cars. I think she grew up in a transmission shop or something. She writes a lot for Clean Technica.
What's her name?
I've forgotten. I've forgotten which author this is, but it's there.
Yeah.
Okay, that is the last of our articles, I think.
I think it is.
And we have a final slide for you,
Let
which
me
is
just check to see that it is. Yeah, that's the last article.
we have a final slide for you, which says,
Is it up there now?
yeah, it is.
Well, it is now.
Have an absurdly excellent week. Why don't you click back to us, Tom? And so we can both.
I'll try and click
I've
back
been
to us
saying to
here.
people as we've been doing this from home for a long time that Tom and I, I'd say, believe me, Tom and I are waving goodbye. And of course, the only way you could believe that would it be if you believed me without seeing. But
you can see us now.
you can
We
see
are
us
waving
now.
goodbye.
Have an absurdly excellent week.